AITA for going back on a deal I shouldn't have agreed to in the first place. First, I am very certain that I should not have agreed to this, so although I appreciate your feedback, please refrain from berating me too harshly. My roommate has many shortcomings as a person and hasn't always been the greatest, but he's been trying and making improvement as he struggles with major challenges in his life. He told me last week that his employer had offered to purchase him a new laptop, so we went to the Apple store to see what was available. Of course, he fell in love with the top model right away, but he found a Black Friday sale on last year's model of the same item that was really fairly cheap. Unfortunately, it turned out that the employer wasn't just going to type in his credit card information. Instead, he was giving a special project that is purportedly simple work within his profession. I'm not really sure what that means, for which he'd be paid enough for the laptop within a few weeks. Of course, this isn't enough for my roommate. Apparently, the job on the computer is quite CPU intensive, and he can't help but think about how much quicker he'd get it done if he had the new machine before starting the work. He was also concerned that if he waited too long, he might lose out on the Black Friday offer. However, it seems that the deal is only available until supply runs out. So he offered me an intriguing offer. If I paid for the new machine using my credit card, he would give me a premium over the cost of the laptop, as well as sell me his old laptop at a discount so that I could resell it on eBay for a profit. So I stand to make roughly $300 by leaving $2,500 on a credit card for 3 weeks, which should cost me nothing in the end. The problem is that I'm beginning to have significant concerns that this will work out. If he doesn't pay me by the credit card's due date at the beginning of next month, I won't have the funds to pay it off myself and will be forced to carry a balance, which would cost me money and interest and affect my creditworthiness. I've been thinking about a home equity loan recently. 2 major failed promises are the root of my skepticism. He owed me $200 in rent at the time I made the order, and he hadn't paid it yet. He also performs some side work for me and promised to complete a project for me by yesterday night. When I returned home, he was sleeping on the sofa, and the project was still unfinished. I opted to adjust the delivery choices at FedEx to avoid the laptop from being delivered before I received my money and papers. It's now concealed in my vehicle, and I'm really contemplating going to the Apple store to return it and wash my hands of the situation. I informed him this morning that I would keep the laptop until I got the money and the papers, and that I would demand him to sign a legal contract. But the more I think about it, the more I want to tell him that the entire thing is a shambles. At 1:00 this afternoon, he finally sent a half-completed paper to me, and I had to spend an hour editing it before I could submit it. I'm going to be chastised for submitting it so late. I really wanted to have it in first thing in the morning, and if I'd known he wasn't going to bring it, I would have done it myself. I depended on his word, on something reasonably basic. These papers shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 hours, and I handed him the project on Monday, and he let me down. So at this point, I'm simply scared that if I go through with this agreement, I'll be burnt. Is it me who is the jerk if I back out of it? Is it honor-bound for me to follow through since we've made a handshake agreement, or am I justified in reneging because his conduct has caused me to hesitate? Edit 1. I've decided to cancel the arranged transaction. I went to the store and returned the machine, so it's no longer physically in my possession. I still haven't spoken to the person about it. I'm terrified of it, but I'm trying my best to mentally prepare for it. Edit 2. It becomes much better in the second edit. I went to take a little sip of bourbon from the bottle I'd kept on my nightstand for a few days last night, and it looked curiously light. This corresponded with my roommate seeming inebriated, despite the fact that there were no empty containers in sight. So, before going for dinner today, I arranged everything in a manner that I could readily recognize. When I arrived home from supper, the bottle had shifted. So it turns out we have deeper issues, and I'm so pleased I listened to the suggestion to return the laptop. Update 1. That article was about a peculiar favor my roommate duped me into performing for him, purchasing a laptop on my credit card with the expectation of repayment when he was compensated for the job the laptop would allow him to accomplish. The opinion of this community and everyone else I spoke with was that my roommate was manipulating me and that I was a jerk for breaking the arrangement, but I truly didn't have an option. I decided to intercept the cargo and hold it until we could further examine the situation, and I offered him the option to refund the money he already owed me. I didn't openly ask him for money. Instead, I merely announced my presence and waited for him to make an offer. He didn't do it. I went to the shop and returned the laptop without more conversation with him so that I wouldn't be tempted to cave into additional manipulation. While all of this was going on, there were other difficulties going on, one of which was a case of missing booze. I kept an unopened box of wine in the fridge. On the day he requested me to purchase the laptop, I saw him sipping some, and he stated he'd had 2 glasses. I, too, had a glass. I went to pick up the box the following day to check how much was left, and it was almost empty. I took it out of the kitchen. I needed a drink, and since the wine was gone, I went to a bottle of bourbon I'd only just opened in my bedroom, which was half empty. I didn't recall drinking that much, and I believed he had come into my room to steal some. So I arranged it in such a manner that if it moved, I'd notice, and when I arrived home last night, sure enough, it had shifted, but there wasn't much more gone. I texted him in order to confront him. There was no response, and when I went to find him, he was asleep on the sofa. I was furious and ready to evict him because of this major violation of trust. When I was taking my daily meds this morning, I noticed that my Adderall container was quite light. There has to be at least 15 tablets missing. I was furious, but I needed to go to court, so I simply left. I texted him that this was the final straw and that he had no choice but to go. I offered to forgive what he still owed me and pay his flight back to his family so he wouldn't have to risk being homeless in the Northeast as the winter began to fall. He eventually texted back. There was no denial, only a brief apology and never again. I'm at a loss on what to do. I'm in a bind. Normally, this type of rhetoric would be enough to make me crumble, but I stood strong and told him we were beyond that I would assist him in getting someplace else, but that he had to go. He responded by threatening to commit suicide. He said it many times more as I pushed him to go to the ER or anything. I was in a serious pickle at the time. I'm in another city right now, and I'm going to go to court. I'm an attorney. I couldn't exactly quit work to go take care of him, but I couldn't ignore a suicide threat. I decided to contact the local police and request that they go check on him. I gave them my address and consented to them entering the home to check on him. I told him that I was going to have someone go check on him, and of course he claimed he was just chatting and needed to remain home to get work done, and that I would be wrecking his life if I did this since he would be fired if he didn't get work done today. That is not my concern. As far as I can tell, at this point, someone texted me from my residence threatening suicide, so contacting the cops was the only option. At this point, I can't think of any other course of action I could have done save contacting the cops. In retrospect, I could have phoned a social worker I know and requested her to make an emergency visit, but this is not her concern and I'm not sure it would be safe for her. So no, I didn't have a choice. Anyway, that's the news. I'm going to go home and check if he's there. I'll contact the cops on the way to see if they can give me an update. Oh, I forgot about the necessary bit. In this circumstance, AITA for calling the police on my roommate's update too. I contacted his mother at the hospital. Definitely a crisis and my resources are exhausted. The mother expresses gratitude and adds she was thinking about doing the same based on her understanding of the scenario. I'll see what I can do to help him keep his job. I'll visit him when the hospital calls to tell me whether he's admitted or discharged. If he's discharged, I'll encourage him to focus on work in crisis mode for a day or two. If he's admitted, I'll figure out how to send a message to the boss and make a vague statement about a medical emergency. Under such conditions, I doubt the person wouldn't be understanding, although his tolerance has probably been tested to the same extent as mine. The mother also confirmed that she is unable to take him in and is unaware of any viable alternatives, so I'll see if I can get him enrolled in an intensive outpatient program. If he is committed to getting serious help, I will let him stay for a while until he is better able to care for himself, but I will erect more boundary enforcements.